Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy Wiener. I'm Director of Education and Public Programs at the Heckscher Museum, and I welcome everyone today. I am so happy that you're here and hope that this will be a sunny part of a kind of cloudy day. So we have been having a wonderful success with the studio tours, and it's so interesting to be able to what I call get a sneak peek from behind the scenes and learn so much more about each of these talented artists. So I am excited to be here today. Christine.
And welcome everyone. My name is Christina Schaff. I'm the Director of Visitor Experience at the museum, and thank you again for joining us and looking forward to learning more from each of these artists.
Okay, so today we are, well, do you want to do the any housekeeping and then I'll just introduce Paul and we'll go from there?
Sure.
I think that would be better.
Okay. So just so everyone knows what to expect for the timing and the format of the program, each tour will last approximately 20 minutes. And we will be taking a 2-minute break, a 5-minute break in between each tour, just to step away from our screens for a moment and stretch our legs. Also, we highly recommend that if you're not in it already, that you move into speaker view. That way you get the largest view on your screen of each tour. We will also be spotlighting each artist as well so that you can get that largest view throughout each tour as well. As I was saying, as people are coming in, if you could please keep your mics muted, that would be fabulous, just so we don't have any background noise. But that being said, don't hesitate to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment at any point. We really envision this as a conversation, so we encourage you to interject as we're experiencing each artist's tour with any questions or comments. And Joy and I will be interjecting throughout to really make this a conversation. So all of that being said, does anyone have any questions before we get going? You can just unmute and ask if you would like. No? Okay, great. So then we're going to start. Joy, if you want to head right into the artist.
So our first artist and visit today is going to be with Paul Farinacci. So if you quickly get in your car, we are heading out to Seacliff, where Paul's studio is now located. Paul is the recipient of a Fulbright as well as other fellowships from NYFA, the Marie Walsh Sharp Art Foundation, and the Skohegan School. Other awards include residencies at Blue Mountain, the Constance Saltonstall Foundation, Fundación Valparaiso in Spain. How did I do? The Malay Colony in New York, the Tin Shop, and Paul has exhibited artwork in New York City, across the United States, and internationally as well. If he had to describe his artwork in 3 words, they would be narrative, social commentary, and dark humor. And with that, I will turn it over to Paul.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to first start off by thanking the Heckscher Museum for this experience. It's been amazing. You've all these opportunities to come to people's studios during the pandemic. It's a great way to sort of highlight the arts. So I'm first going to give you a little tour of my studio. Let me see if I can turn this around. Okay, here we go. So basically, I'm just going to walk you through just so you can see the space I'm working in now. I have lots and lots of storage because I work with lots of materials all the time, and I'm a collector of things. So I make sure I have cabinetry all over the place. It's a very small space I'm in now because I had a leak in my home, and I had to sort of reconfigure where I'm working from. I have rolls of paper everywhere. The thing great about this is I have an amazing view in Seacliff of the water from this studio. So lots of great light. All right, so this is my workstation where I'm working three-dimensionally. I have lots of table space for them. And here are some paintings I've been working on recently. I'm working on three of them at once. Here's a drawing. And I'm gonna come back around. So again, on storage, I collect art materials too. And here we go. Okay. I'm going to start off talking about my work. I've been focusing on, let me see, I'll show these, is I've been doing a series of houses. I've been really focusing on the house as a metaphor for society. And I sort of create these structures that look like homes from the outside. And then when you peek inside, they expose dirty little secrets about society. During the pandemic, this has become, my work is really sort of perfect for what's going on because people are spending so much time in their homes. I light them up. There's always a light source inside, so you can peek inside to see them. I'm really interested in sort of the play of how media and technology has affected our lives, how we are talking on cell phones with very private, often private things that everyone can see. So there's sort of a, I'm interested in the distinction between our private and our personal realms and things that we hear that we shouldn't be hearing. So all these things are sort of going on in my head. Let's see, I'm going to show you sort of, I guess I'll start here. So these are sort of just some of the pieces I've been working on recently. I travel, I try to do residencies all the time. I also teach, and residencies are a great way to get away for a long period of time and sort of reconnect. This house right here I'm working on right now has this deer on top, and it's dealing with, I was away in Wyoming and there was a lot of, I'd never been around hunting before in my life, and I kept wanting to save all the animals. So I was thinking about how people, these beautiful deer were there, and then people would shoot them. And I was thinking, and then they had pet dogs at home. So I was thinking, playing with the idea of if a deer was sort of your pet at home, and then in one of the rooms of the house is going to be the deer hanging on the wall. So I'm constantly thinking of different ideas about things that are happening around me, or I read in current events. This one I'm working on now is just about during teaching, I deal with a lot of kids that come from broken homes. So I was thinking of the idea of the house being split into two sections. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the materials that you're using for these sculptures?
So I always start with recycled materials. I start generally with the house is a box. I just get cardboard boxes. Sometimes the box, I pick a specific box because of the material, has something to do with the subject matter I'm dealing with. It could be dog food if I'm doing something about dogs. I mean, it doesn't always work that way, but I start with a cardboard box. I love the idea of recycling. And then I start cutting into it, and I make, here's this little, this is just an example of how I start with like a little, this would be a window, just a piece of cardboard. I use an X-Acto. I use a scalpel. A friend of mine who was in the biology major gave me a scalpel I have to be really careful with, but it's amazing. It's really satisfying cutting through layers of cardboard and peeling it away and then rebuilding it. The figures are made with pipe cleaners, wire, foil. Here's some little ones. I'm really starting to use the materials. I didn't sort of say anything about my teaching, but I've been teaching for over 20 years. And my materials just sort of naturally change working with younger kids. And I loved watching them work and sort of how free they are. And I wanted some of that to be in my work. I try not to make them look too realistic or too finished. I kind of like that childlike quality that they would have. It's a struggle always to go back and forth to sort of keep that sort of freshness that the kids would have. Let's see, I'm trying to think. I'm sorry, I'm showing you a bunch of different things because I work in different mediums. I switch back and forth. The houses have these little windows that I wanted the viewer to sort of have to peek into, which I'll see with this, but I will show you in another view. I like the whole idea of having to work at it, because people now, also because of media, we're so used to fast fixes, and moving on to the next image, so I want you to sort of have to spend time peeking in the window in the top of the house to find out what's going on inside of it. The lights are to sort of entice you. I have a video I'll show you of the house is all illuminated. Let's see. So I want to show you some. So my teaching has affected a lot of my work, and I've been really fascinated with test scores and what kids have to do with test papers. So I started using actual test papers to create some of the work. So this chair is covered, it's a school chair, and it's all covered in standardized test forms. I collect them, and then inside the subject matter deals with that. This is actually, let's see if I can open it. It's a little, I'll see if I can, I'll show you. So you can see, so there's a person in there in a straitjacket. It's a student. All right, let me see, I'll come around again. I then started thinking of the idea of making children's clothes out of the test paper. So I'm thinking I would like to do an installation of a whole room just built out of the standardized tests. There's just one way, one form I've been using that teaching has affected.
Paul, can I ask with the clothing, how are you, is that using actual clothing and shoes and hats there as like an armature, or you
some of them I did, and others I just made forms from them and the cardboard, and then they're glued over. It's paper mache project, so that it gets really hard. So even the hat, everything is sort of like that. And then of course I had to make some kind of window structure for it, because I actually wanted you to be able to look through and peek again, because I love the idea of peeking into things and examining things and exposing other things. All right, let me show, let's see. So this is a large drawing. I started doing drawings with houses in them. The house is up, it's kind of hard to see the light. This was about teaching. I kept thinking about being in an educational system when you're a creative person is very stifling at times. And teachers are often forced to sort of follow each other. And I kept feeling like they were sheep or lambs. So this picture, they were symbolized by the sheep. And then this tornado effect with the schoolhouses flying in the tornado, and kids are in there and other things are happening.
Could you talk a bit about the technique that you used to create this drawing?
Sure. The drawings came out of the houses. I started with the houses, and when I started showing them, I noticed people weren't always looking in them. They would just discount them as houses, like doll houses, and they didn't realize there was a whole nother level to them inside. So I said, well, how can I get people to sort of confront them or interact with them more? So I decided to do these large scale drawings where they interact with the person's physical space, so they have to sort of interact with them. Paper is prepared. I start with white. It's watercolor paper. I spent a lot of time doing layers and layers of acrylics with modeling paste and building up the color until I get it just sort of right. And then I draw into it with charcoal. It kind of comes out, I like the idea, it sort of comes out almost like a lithograph or an etching or something like that. And I like that idea. Not every color works with this technique, so I have to really figure it out, which colors the charcoal will adhere to. It's very, very fragile, has to really be fixed afterwards, but it's very, very satisfying to work on, just as long as you don't smear it while you're working, because it really sits on the surface. It doesn't go into the paper like most charcoal would go into the mesh of the paper. This does not. Okay. And this one is, and titles became very important to me at this time. I never used to title my work. I always liked it more to be ambiguous. So this one is called Silence of the Lambs. I just like the play of the idea of these lambs going out. The tornado also was sort of, I didn't do it on purpose. I just started noticing references to the Wizard of Oz keep coming out in my work years after year, in different ways. And this sort of, the house in the tornado reminded me of that. Here's another, this is another one. This is a little girl. I sort of use the test papers again to become blind, and also she's also around her mouth. It's also a tie around her hands, and then the test papers in front of her. Okay. So while the pandemic started, the piece that I have in the exhibit is a smaller work. I started doing smaller works, house drawings just like those, but much more focusing on one aspect of the house and not so much, oh, I can't see that, not so much on what's going on the inside. Because of the size, I wanted it to be more immediate again, of just playing with the, how people interact. So I did one that's in the exhibit is a house with a surgical mask around it. And then I started working on going back to oil painting, which is what I had done in the past. And these are what I've been working on right now. And dealing with what's going on with the pandemic. And I did one with toilet paper rolls, the craziness with all that going on. And then I teach remotely, and it's seeing what you see in kids' homes. I started thinking about all the different ways kids are listening and learning at home.
Question, Paul?
Yeah, sure.
About the light inside the houses, is that painted or is it actually illuminated?
No, it's an actual electric light. I'm going to show you a video where it's really demonstrate that in about 2 minutes. That's my next phase of this, which will explain. This is just to give you what these are the ones I'm working on now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also, again, with the teaching, I do puppets with the kids, and I always love puppets. So just by accident, I was playing with 2 puppets that one girl had given me and another girl had moved away, and they became these 2 characters in my work, the 2 Bettini sisters. Semolina is the star here, and this one, her name always changes. I can't remember what it is. It's some kind of pasta. And we first did a video I did with my sister and my brother. We were just playing around, and I really got into it. They were really great at helping, and then I sort of take them on the road with me. They've gone to Wyoming, they've gone to Spain. I put them in my suitcase. I've started some little video footage with it. I'll show you a little tiny bit at the end. And then I started using them in photographs like this to sort of go along with subject matter. One of the houses I created, I made a video, and they are the stars in the video that's going on inside the house. It's almost like a TV screen. I know I'm saying a lot of information. It will come together, I hope, when I show you the houses in the next part I'm going to do. Okay, let's see. All right, I think, and here's one more. This one is a little takeoff on an old Goya painting and the Death of Marat painting. And I just thought, this is called Death by Number 2, because the focus in schools was always standardized testing. At least now, hopefully we're focusing on other things. All right. Okay, I think I'm ready to show the video.
That would be excellent. So you're going to share the other right?
I got to get off of this one, correct?
Yeah.
Can everybody see? That's so nice. Okay. Sorry. How about now? Am I sharing my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Okay,
Or no, you're not, excuse me, you're not sharing.
I'm not, okay. Now I am?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is how I intended the houses to be seen in a darkened room, but that's not always available when you're exhibiting, because there's other artists in the space.
Paul, I also, you know, with your video making and now you have audio playing here, is that how you ideally envision people experiencing your work as well with audio?
Yeah, I'm getting more into the audio part and the video part of it. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that. And I may ultimately lose the houses at some point and have it more of just video installation. I'm not sure at this point. But it's definitely becoming more and more of a part. That's what I would like them to look at. Now I'm going to show you what they look like in bright light so you really can see them, and I'll give you an indication what they look like inside. So the stands are also really important. Sometimes I find stands, a lot of times I make them myself. This one was an old cart that I thought was great. And this work is about how the family unit is very different. We don't sit for dinner anymore. Everybody's on media or technology the whole time. So this was called home computer. Each person, you can't see from this, but each one's on a different little website. And this one is, I was thinking about all the problems with the church. I grew up Catholic, and I found this chalice, which was the starting of this whole work. I thought it was a great symbol, and I decided to convert it into something else. It's just inside of the house. Basically, inside the church is this, I thought of it as a swinging bachelor pad for a priest. And unfortunately, there's a young boy that the chalice becomes a hot tub. And then this is an altar boy watching on in disbelief. There's even a disco ball hanging. It's at the top. I use a lot of mirrors too, so when you're looking in, sometimes you can't see something, but you get a little peek at something around the corner because they make the holes really small. Like this one, when you're looking in, there's a mirror. You can't see what's going on really, but there's another opening on top of the house. Gee, I look in every place. Chimneys, doors, back windows. I always have different ways to see different aspects of it. And this is called Undercover, and it's about a little boy and his toy army men are sort of taking over. I was just thinking about how a lot of violent games kids play as a child. I never opened these, so you guys are really getting a sneak peek into them. Usually you got to work to look into them. Now I'm working to show you. This one's identity theft, and it's about Alzheimer's. The figures in it don't have any faces on them, but the older woman does. And my mother was older and she was starting to forget things. And I was thinking about how scary it must be when you don't recognize people. So that was called identity theft. Again, Wizard of Oz. I did not plan this. I had finished the sculpture and my sister was throwing out things. She had these 2 doll legs and I went home and stuck them under the schoolhouse. And I said, now it's finished, because I just couldn't finish it. I didn't know what it needed.
You talked about Wizard of Oz. It makes me think of that with, you know, the witch.
Yes. Now this, way before the virus, I was putting teachers and students in masks because I always felt like education can sometimes be suffocating. It's like a gas mask. So this one was, this again was talking about testing, how we start testing them from very young. That's why it was ABC, SAT. This one, I was thinking about Americana. I was about baseball, and then there's always a lot of stories about athletes and abuse with their families. So I started thinking of the whole idea of batter up. The song that's playing is actually playing inside this house. That's why we're listening to it. It's the video. This is the video with the puppets that I had mentioned earlier. So the boy on the top floor has his hands on his here and he's watching this. the mother and father are on the second floor, and then the lower floor is a little girl. They started up being one room, quick and easy, and that's why I started them, because I needed to work a different way. And then I tend to work more complicated, and things always get more complicated. And then I pull back, and then I switch. I'm always thinking of other ways to do it. This is the first one I ever used fabric on the outside, because I like the whole patchwork quilt. I was thinking of Americana and apple pie, all those things. So this is the inside. This is the husband and wife, who's caveman, and then the lower floor.
You have a house within a house?
Yeah, it's a dollhouse within a dollhouse. Yeah. And then there's the daughter, and she's sort of playing with her dolls, reenacting what she's seeing upstairs. I had a lot of fun doing the video, and the sound, I love the sound. You can't always hear it, but for this you can. This one I built the base with, I use AstroTurf for the bottom, and then I use baseball bats as the legs. And this was started when I was away. I think I was upstate, and we were right near farmland on the resort residency, and there's a woman who had a sheep farm again, and I was thinking about all the hunting again, and I wanted to save the animals, so I have the animal inside hiding, the sheep. And it was about animal testing, and there's a mother using makeup products that were produced by all that stuff. And if you peek in the chimney, there's a rabbit. Oh, this will be another picture there. That's real. That was the sheep's fur I got from one of the women there who had a farm there. She was really happy to give it to me. She was excited to see what I was going to do with it. So the top floor is a scientist with a rabbit, and the rabbit grabs the knife. Then it's another room with animals waiting. And there's our sheep. This was one of the more simple ones because it's just one little room. And inside,
You look at the top.
Yeah.
You see the scene.
This one was I was thinking of a businessman nest egg, and he's actually sitting in a little bird's nest I collected. The branch I had found, and then the lobster trap is as the base.
The bird is feeding him in the cage.
So that's the houses. So that as I said, once I started doing the houses, I also started doing these large drawings. That one was actually painted. This one was downsizing. I was thinking about the play on the words. It's actually the wife shooting the husband. A lot of gun violence things I've been playing in my head with all the stuff that happens in the news. This was home security. Everybody in the home is carrying a gun.
This is powerful.
This one is father and son at playtime. This goes along with the church one. Oh, it's going a little fast.
It's so fast, I
Yeah.
can't see it.
Watch it bring it back. You said it.
This one is, when I was in college, I had seen the work of Sue Coe, who does all the stuff about animal rights, and I became a vegetarian from that day. And this is the first piece I did, which was much more graphic. It was really hard for me to sort of do some of these images. I always sort of cleaned it up more. Again, I was staying on another residency, and this one, someone had come from Farm Sanctuary and was talking to me, and then this image came of the farmers and what happens with our food. This one was based on the oil spills. This was that.
About these.
And then this, my sisters live in California. My sister's house was the last house that didn't burn in one of the fires in Oakland. She was actually literally, they were on the roof with hoses, and every house around her had burned. And I just kept thinking about how lucky we are. We don't have that. At least we have everything else going on. But and then this one was just, they're all, I mean, I was thinking a lot with these last few about our planet and, you know, the crazy weather that's happening all the time and flooding. And I'm lucky my house is the tallest house in Seacliff, I was told. So flooding is one thing I don't have to worry about, but I was thinking about all the other people that do. So this was another. And these are all basically the same size. They're about 7 or 8 feet tall and about 50 feet wide. So they really invade your space. Okay, so what I was going to end with in the video, I put a little tiny snippets. These are definitely not finished. They're just sort of a little introduction to the puppets, just because it's kind of a weird connection after this, but it is what it is. I thought it'd be a nice way to transition to the next town that we're gonna, you know, next person that's gonna speak. To lighten it up a bit.
Damalina, what are you doing?
I'm checking my email.
I've been on there for hours trying to go to sleep. You need your beauty sleep, don't you?
And I'm just, huh? Oh, it's a beautiful day, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is.
There's a delicious cappuccino.
Oh, yeah, enjoy that.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, I like the cheesecake too. What are you doing, Samalina?
Oh, nothing, don't
Oh,
worry.
please look where you're going. I worry about you driving. What are you eating?
Oh, nothing, I just had to strap something.
You cannot eat something while you're driving. Oh my goodness, you're eating cheesecake in the car. Oh my, Samalina. Oh, we should be. What happened? Cake while you're driving in the car. We're going to get in an accident. Look out, we're going to get hurt. Look out. Oh, I know, I think I have the whiplash.
Oh, my God. Oh, I see the white light. The white light.
Oh, that man, he looks very angry.
Hey, what'd you do like that?
Oh, no. Police!
Run!
We better go.
Let's go.
This is when I took them to Wyoming. And the horse was just there in one of the houses at the residency, so I knew I had to do something with it. That's it. Nope.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Paul. This was amazing.
So funny.
I love ending with those puppets. It's fabulous.
Yes, I have a question. My
Great.
name is Sheila. Yes, Paul, I enjoyed your work, seeing your work very much. When you do your residencies, do you have to complete work or is it just for experimenting?
No, it's generally just for experimenting. I tend to go on residencies where there's no, you know, no cost and you don't have to give them anything, or there's so many residencies out there. So it's basically just uninterrupted time to work on your work. Generally, they might ask you for an idea of what you're going to be working on. They don't want you just hanging out, but just time to sort of create.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think
I have a
Mel.
question.
Okay, great.
Oh, it's Mike Krasowitz. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Mike.
I really enjoy your work, and it's great to see the evolution of what you've been doing.
Oh, thank you.
We know each other a long time. So where do you see your work going in the future?
I think I'm getting, like I started to say to Christine, I think I'm starting more video stuff. I'm getting more interested in adding video to the work and maybe even doing a video installation. I mean, I started even doing that at teaching. I started doing more videos, and I just sort of like the next realm of it, and be integrating the puppets or other things into that. But I think that's, I'm always going to draw though and sculpt, but I just think that might be the next level. I actually would like to make a big house, not little houses. Now I want to go the other extreme.
Ooh.
One that you could walk into and interact in.
I think that would be amazing, Paul, if
Very
you could
cool.
step inside,
I always loved Red Groom's installations that he did.
Yeah.
Like so.
That's what I was just thinking of.
Yeah. I brought my students to see that years ago in Times Square. It was quite a scene.
Great. Any other final questions before we keep going?
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I think I haven't seen Paul for quite a while, and I love his work. And he seems like he's been so prolific since the last time I saw him. It's awesome. And I love the idea of a big house. I'd love to see that. Great. Made me smile.
Good, thank you. Okay, well, so thank you so much, Paul. This was fabulous. We really appreciate it. And also, if any other questions, strike you. Paul's not going anywhere. Hopefully he'll be here for the rest of the program.
Okay, so Luke has a studio in his home in Babylon, New York. He was born and raised on the South Shore of Long Island, where he continues to reside today. And growing up in and around communities and people who built their lives around the water is something that has greatly influenced him, both as an artist and a human being. He combined with his love of water, his mother's instilled an appreciation of art and art practice, making sure he took a sketchbook with him wherever he went from a very young age. And he is still carrying that sketchbook, so we know that all was going well. Luke works as a senior high school art teacher and continues to create art. He describes his artwork as candid, considerate, and critical. Please welcome Luke Merz.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Luke, so it's really nice to have you all here. Thank you for coming, and a special thanks to the Hexture for putting this together. I know it's kind of crazy, and one of the best parts about being in a show is getting to interact with all the different artists and people, seeing the work for the first time. So even though we can't exactly do that in the way we normally would, it's nice that they've put this together, and you guys get a little bit of a sneak peek behind my work, and we get to interact and talk about art, which it's not really much better than that. So with that being said, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a tour of the space that I work in. If I can flip the camera around so you can kind of see. So if you're familiar with my work at all, mostly everything is on paper that I've been doing lately. So that's kind of indicative of the space that I'm working in, right? Piles and piles of paper for different things and different little weird projects that I have going on. So you can kind of get an idea. Like Joy mentioned, sketchbook is something, well, it's not the same sketchbook that I've always carried around. I just have boxes and boxes of old and new sketchbooks, because that's kind of where most of my work takes off from, right? Working in there and then going from that. So this is kind of my general workstation. Below, I kind of have we joked about it the other day, my like to-go boxes of everything that I need if the house is flooding or burning down that I don't want to lose. And then kind of just from my seat at my desk, I have access to whatever I might want. I have kind of stations of materials, old work. I'm going to show you guys some of that. I have access to my watercolors, which is the work that the Hexture has. And then just kind of any sort of assorted art supplies, some books and stuff, snippets of weird photocopies I've made for, I've been doing a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Mail art lately, kind of through the quarantine. I was sending my work around that way. So before I get to kind of the work that's in the hecture, I'll just give you a little bit of an idea of kind of where that comes from. Sorry, I'm just setting up this clamp thing for the phone. All right. So you can hook you onto there. Let's see. Hopefully this keeps working. All right. So kind of most of my work previously to the more recent stuff I've been doing is founded in illustration. So you can kind of see here. So this is a little bit older, but that's kind of where I was doing. Prismacolors is probably forever will be my favorite medium to use. There's just something about, and I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with my work in sketchbooks, is the ease of transportation and always having access to them. So always growing up when I was in high school and then in college, I started, pretty much using almost exclusively Prismacolors, and I'd work in my sketchbooks, and a lot of my work at that time would just be straight up torn out of sketchbooks, because I think there's some sort of pressure involved sometimes when you start on a blank piece of paper that is going to be a final product, where if you're working in a sketchbook and then you just decide to rip it out, it's kind of less pressure if you decide you don't like it in the end. So this was it was for a show that was involved in kind of cartooning, but you can see this is just a little illustration of a start to finish project I was working on. So the other thing that I will mention in this, and you'll kind of see it in the next two works I have to show for you, is we see there's like sort of a grid-like pattern going on, right? There's sort of a geometry to it in a sense. So that was kind of that. The other thing that I've always worked with a lot is my own photography, including that in work. So this is just an example of a bunch of Polaroids that I had taken when I was in California once. Again, same sort of a thing. We see this gridding of the images, right? I definitely battle the left brain, right brain situation a lot, and I'm someone who enjoys symmetry, sometimes to a fault probably. But so I was kind of working on that. And you can just see that. So these are all photos that I took, and the work you see now is all photos that I've taken and I then incorporated into the work. So the other thing that I will say is I always was thinking probably bigger than a single work with my projects. So these are just some photos from my senior show. I had done a whole installation in the gallery, incorporated. I had this couch here and cabinets filled with different stuff, and then all my work on the wall, you kind of see that's all photos and drawings and paintings that I had done. So there's kind of this idea of created spaces that I've always worked around. I think I was kind of drawing them before I was actually creating them, because I didn't have the access to, people weren't just giving me walls and galleries to do work on, and that's probably the best case scenario, or what I'd like people to do most often, but it's not really a reality. So I was kind of drawing created spaces, and then this was an opportunity I had to actually create, an installation that people got to enter and exist in, which was really cool. So you can kind of see, this is just all my friends at the show, but it was something I wanted people to be sitting on the couch, hanging out, like you were, at your house or something. Sometimes I think galleries can be a little stuffy, and when they put the lines on the wall that you can't get up close and everything. So it was something that I really felt strongly about, that people were interacting. And again, so you sort of see this combination of images in the back, right? There's this gridding to it, and yeah, I don't know. So I think that kind of plays into the work that is in the hecture that I've been doing lately. And if you're not familiar with the work, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of kind of what it's like here. Fix this so we can all square it away. So the work that I've been doing lately is, or the work specifically that's in the Hexture, is these watercolor paintings that are of landscapes, and then they have these spaces that are taken out of them. I kind of refer to them as voids. And so the idea for me is, I think a lot of times you go to places and you go there with people, and those people kind of become a part of the place or a part of your memory of a place. And then if you don't return to it with those people, or those people no longer become part of your lives, or, you know, they move on or what have you, those places are then kind of missing parts of them, right? Like the people are not there with you, so they're missing pieces of those memories that have kind of been taken away. So for me, and I'll go more into this, how I kind of do this is they're all photos that I took, and then I just use like shipping labels, blank shipping labels, and kind of paste them, stick them onto the images. And some of them are like more conscious than others. Some of them you'll see are like this one maybe is more representative of people specifically that could be in the image, whereas other ones, there's definitely more like aesthetic decision making going on, you know, the placement of the voids. So you can see that's just the photo, that's the painting. And I'll show you guys one more. So it's another one. Just so this is all kind of from the series that you see my work is of at the Hexture right now. So the other thing that I have is, as you can kind of probably get the impression of, is I'm really good or bad, depending on who you are, at collecting way too many things involved in one specific piece. So this is one kind of the start of one of the ones that is in the Hexture. So you can see that's the original photograph, and then this is what I was doing the painting from, right? That I put the kind of voids in there, so you kind of get the idea of this one's a specific person that was taken out of it. And then the other one I have is the other work that I have at the Hexture, and this one I kind of have a fair bit more on, but you'll see that's kind of the original photo I was working from. And for this one, I can show you one of the original mock-ups I made before the final one, just kind of figuring it out. And one thing that a lot of my work you'll see is there's like a fair bit of planning. I'm definitely kind of a perfectionist, so you can kind of see that there's a lot of trial and error in it, kind of figuring out different parts of it, how it'll work, a zillion different color tests, right? But as you saw in the previous ones, you know, I'm cutting them down to the small size, but there's all this extra stuff going on, which I think people think is interesting, I've been told. So you can kind of see, I just have some scraps from some other ones. And usually what I'm incorporating the sides is kind of playlists of what I'm listening to while I'm doing it. You can see these ones are just different bands, different playlists that people gave me, or mixtapes. I'm someone who has always been involved in like burning CDs for people for mixes, and now I kind of do them on cassettes because I think it's a little more tactile and kind of old school that way. Sometimes they just have weird things that I'm thinking about, or something someone said, you know, when I was in school maybe that I thought was ridiculous. It's a commentary of them.
Luke, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Just as we're looking at all these notes that you take, have you ever thought of putting words in any way into your work itself?
Yeah, well, I think I do that a fair bit. You'll see it in that there's one that's a newer one, and the other one I was going to show you that you see that more of is in this one, this piece right here. Let's go closer, maybe. So this one's kind of like probably a combination of both of those ideas, right? I have photographs that I'm putting in here that are things that I took, as well as there's some watercoloring. There's kind of this more illustrative, cartoony drawing in it. And then I have different words in it for different things, right? The Muhammad Ali over Sonny Liston is like something I end up putting in work a lot. I don't know why. I know why. He rules, obviously. He's the sickest. It's just like such an iconic image. And I always loved that he stood over the top of him and was telling him, get up and fight, sucker. Like, what's better than that? Like taunting someone after you just knock them out in 13 seconds or whatever it was. But yeah, and then I just have, you can see there, this one has some notes in it, right? Different work that, or commentary rather, on different things that I'm thinking. Again, sometimes it's references to songs or people or weird, obscure quotes that I've pulled from a book that I'm reading. I think art, more than anything, is so connected, right? There's so many different directions you can go and everything's so intertwined. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I always struggle to talk about my work, is because, you know, you talk about one thing and it can go you down like 20-minute rabbit holes of like why it says sad sappy sucker, which is a title of an album by a band, or, you know, where stuff comes from. And then all of a sudden you went from talking or looking at a work of art, and then you're talking about, I don't know, like what it means to exist in the universe and everything in between. So I think it's a good thing, but it also is kind of difficult sometimes. But that's kind of that, right? So that's that combination of both of them a little bit.
Luke, I'm sorry. Is that the piece that you also integrated sewing?
Yeah. This one. So this one you also see, you can kind of tell I sewed the images onto it, right? I had talked about that. I started doing these, I did Valentine's a long time ago where I sewed them for people, because there's an artist who you may or may not be familiar with, Thomas Campbell. He's really involved in kind of surf and skate culture, which is something that is a really big component of my life. Two things that I do and I'm obviously passionate about. So I always thought his work was really cool, because what he does is he kind of collages things and makes these flowers out of sewn pieces. So I thought it would be something interesting to try and do also. This is one of the only times I incorporated it into like a final piece, right? But it was like kind of a fun test, you know, teach yourself how to sew, see how it goes. My mom and my grandma were very helpful and patient with me and figuring out how it works, as I got, you know, grief about trying to sew paper, and that's not really what you're supposed to do. But
it's interesting, the relationship between how you sewed too, like mostly horizontal. Obviously there are some diagonals and verticals as well. And then how you have like crossed out wording as well.
Mm-hmm.
And adding that layer of texture.
Yeah, I'm someone, like I kind of mentioned before, while I would say most of my work is based in drawing, right? Be it in a sketchbook, or even I think my watercolor paintings are kind of a form of drawing. I mean, you're painting, I'm layering the paint and everything, but they're starting as a drawing, and there's something kind of fundamental about that to me. But I really love collaging. Like, I think it's fun. It's kind of low pressure in a way. And like I was mentioning, kind of during the COVID and always I've kind of been involved in it, but like I really enjoy just like sending mail art of clippings of weird, like I have like old French encyclopedias that have like that's kind of what you see over here, is just like clips of weird stuff for that I'll use and cut out, you know, weird pictures that I think are funny, and you know, you glue them down and collage them and send them out into the world, and then that's kind of where they're at, you know. So yeah, that's kind of that. So in like a more natural progression from, so that I was kind of doing that, and then I started doing these voids, right? And then I started kind of taking out the I was thinking about how, like, you know, these snippets of these memories that you're losing are also kind of how you see people sometimes, or how I see people, like just as the parts of them. So when I was working on these in grad school, a lot of people were giving me grief about like what was inside the voids. Like that was a big, I don't think it's really important personally. I mean, it's important to me, but I don't know if it's important for the viewer. But I made a zine about it because everyone was annoying me. So I started taking that's just a mock-up for me. I started taking the parts that I was cutting out of the images, right, the voids, and then putting them onto the page, right? So you can kind of see this is more of like a study in a sense. But from this, I started thinking about how, you think about people, or at least me, and you don't always have like an image of them, what they look like in your head, but you might have, these like flashes of memories of people and experiences you've had, or, songs maybe that played while you were with them and that kind of thing. So, and you can this is all, because again, I just keep way too much stuff. You can kind of see, so this is like what they look like when they're cut out, which is, there's something interesting about that too, I think. But so I started taking those pieces and thinking about how I could be arranging them, right? So then I kind of started working in the opposite sort of a way, where I was taking, and these are, well, that's a collage, but then I was doing these solar plate printing of them. So you can kind of see this is now like the opposite of the voids, right? It's arranging these shapes, and again, this kind of geometric, methodical way on the page. And then I was doing some paintings from those, right? And from there, I've been kind of working, doing that as well, and I'll show you, it makes more sense at this point to show you. So kind of the opposite of that work, or the opposite of the voids, right? And I started doing these as larger paintings, is sort of these works, right? So this is a pretty recent one. And again, I'm like taking snippets of images, and this one has some of the words again incorporated into it. I think that is kind of important for me. I like that. I like writing. I like reading. I don't know. But it's taking snippets of different things, right? Different photos I've taken. Some of them are kind of abstracted. Some of them are these. A lot of those that you saw are like overheads of white water breaking, and like when you look at that, and at the beach and the shore break and stuff. So there's sort of these abstractions there, as well as pieces of images from places that I've been that might have to do with the person that this is kind of centered around, or the idea or the memory. So that's kind of
in this one also how you're starting to overlap. Like in many of the other works you've shown, I feel like there's a lot of space between every rectangle, and here connecting more.
Yeah. So I think for this one, like, I don't know, I go through phases where I use color or don't use color, and somewhere in between. And I guess at this point, and kind of lately, I've been using these like pink colors, kind of pinks and reds. I think that, I don't know, I just like how it looks with black and white. So I think kind of interacting between the black and the white and the small color, even those are still monochromatic, right? They're all different shades or values of the same color. How they kind of interact with the black and white is interesting to me, at least. Some things pop, some things come forward and recede, and yeah.
Well,
I think
even when you remove the blue, like the color from the water images, it's sort of doesn't feel necessarily like water right away,
Yeah.
On a different feeling.
Yeah, someone I was talking about it with actually yesterday, and they were talking about how they're like, why are you painting all this camouflage? And I was like, oh God, is that what it looks like? I hope not. Not that there's anything wrong with camouflage, but I was just like, that never like registered for me. I don't know. That's definitely a problem I have, where like I think things look like a thing because I obviously like know the whole story, But maybe that's important too. People should come to their own decisions and what it means to them. So that's kind of that. That's a finished one. And then kind of the other progression of it, I'll show you, is a work in progress I have. It's kind of the same idea. This one I think like converse to that one, has a lot more of the negative space that we were talking about, right? So this one's obviously not quite as far along, but you kind of see that I'm incorporating different like parts of memories, right? Pieces of things that are centered around a person or an idea. So this one's kind of, it all has to do with a specific person, but also a place. Everything here is from time I spent in Rincon, Puerto Rico. I spent a winter there a few years back with one of my best friends. And yeah, so it's just kind of bits and pieces of that experience and things we did, and that remind me of, you know, both there as well as them. So kind of see that. So I think this has to do, again, like I was talking about, kind of like the created spaces and the, you know, arrangement of images. Like I talked about this the other day when we were speaking about it, but there's something about like that I like the idea of, like that it's sort of just how you would put stuff on your wall, maybe like photos and weird stuff. Like if you're decorating a house, or if I was given the opportunity to, you know, do an installation in a show, how I might be arranging things and putting them all together and making connections for the viewer of what you're seeing.
Ideally, is that the type of work that you would, you know, you're striving to do, like installation work?
Yeah, I mean, like that, I think that's the coolest. I mean, you know, what I think about, at least like my experience with it, and like what I would want to do is it's all like, I would want it to be made up of my own work, you know, like all of my own drawings and photos and weird sculptures and stuff. But I do like the idea of like forcing people to interact with the space, kind of, and, you know, like how they navigate it. I think is interesting. I don't know.
Great.
So that's kind of that. Yeah, and then I guess just the only other thing I'll show you real quick is, because I have it, so you get a better idea. I have like some of the ones that I've been working on. There's still the voids, but you can just kind of get an idea of what goes into it, right? The process a little bit. So again, it always starts with these photos, right, of a place. And this one, you just see there's quite a few different examples, right? I took these, there's different angles, how I wanted. And then I try it out by putting down the cut labels, right? How do I like them? And sometimes I'll be, you know, putting the tracing paper over it to figure out where I would like to see them until I get it in the right spot, what I'm doing. From there, there's like a fair bit of the testing, figuring it out, drawing it. What's it gonna look like? Can I actually succeed in painting this? Which is definitely always a bit of a struggle. And then, you know, it goes to the final, which this one's kind of just got started, so you can see, but that's kind of the process of it, if that's what interests you. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've got for you.
That's great. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Luke, and very interesting to see your process. And I'm wondering, when you go out and take photographs, are they just random, or do you have something in mind first, and then you go out and look for it?
I think it sort of goes both ways for me. Like some of them are just, I'm someone that takes a lot of photos. I shoot film a lot. I have boxes of some of them on my desk over here, some of them hidden, of just photos that probably no one will ever see, which is fine. You know, like when you're out with friends, I'm shooting photos just of stuff you see. And then, so sometimes if it's something like for the voids that is an experience I had that I thought about, that I wanted to incorporate into my work, I can kind of go back into my own archives and see if I have photos that connect with that image specifically, or that idea that I'm working with. Other ones, like kind of that last one that I showed you of the table outside, it was like a specific moment in time or experience that I was thinking about. And luckily that place was still set up kind of similar to the moment and the person that I was thinking about. So I was able to go back and take a bunch of photos that I would then be able to work from reference from. So it kind of goes both ways.
Did you ever have a particular photo image in mind that you needed and it wasn't in your collection and you, you know, struggled with getting the right image?
Yeah, that's definitely,
Well,
that's
yeah,
definitely a thing.
what happened then?
Well, I think like, I don't know, I've heard I wouldn't consider myself a photographer by any means, but I think about it sometimes with surfing or just in life, I guess. But like sometimes I think that the best photos are the ones that you know you never got. Like, or like I think about like the waves that you missed or blew or something, or like photos that you're like, I just wish like if I fired it off 1 second earlier, you know, it might have been better or something. So there was that. And there's places that obviously we can't. I think during like the COVID, when I was working on some of these, it was kind of hard in some respects because there were places that I knew I couldn't get to, you know, physically to take them. Right. So there's kind of that aspect to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to ask you, Luke, about your teaching and how you feel that perhaps has impacted your work.
Well, I think that on one hand, like I'm someone who has always kind of enjoyed a media diversity in my own work. So being able to kind of bounce from different things. So if I'm teaching something, like I might be working on, like if we're doing clay, say, maybe I'm kind of working on my own clay stuff on the side just because I have that all, you know, ready to go and it's already out. And I'm, you know, demoing stuff for the kids and thinking about how I might be incorporating that into my work. But I think conversely, like stuff that I'm interested in, I'm more keen to bring into the classroom for the kids. So for instance, like now we're doing, you know, I have 2 virtual classes, kids who are all at home and are not in. So I've been trying to think about, you know, how I can do things that are going to be 1, interesting and 2, successful to them. So I've kind of started figuring out how I'm going to do like mail art lessons with them. So I don't know how many people are really interested in that, but that's something that I'm really interested in and using my own work so I can kind of bring that into them in the classroom, which is probably better than if I was just talking about something I know nothing about. So it kind of goes both ways probably.
Sure.
Great. And mail art, particularly right now with COVID, is an interesting, you know, way to connect without physically being in the same space, you know?
Yeah, it's fun. It's like something that I never really knew was a thing. Like I've always kind of sent postcards and I'm like a big postcard US Postal Service fan kind of. And I always have been like, since I was little, I always sent postcards where I went to my friends. And then I started, I would do like, you know, you'd alter the images, maybe you like draw on the back or maybe you know, stick a sticker from a, you know, a surf shop or something on the front of them and whatever. And that's what you send. That was just kind of like a thing. I just thought I was weird and did. And then when I was in undergrad and college, I had an art history professor who like, I don't know why, maybe I was working on one or something and like became aware of what I was doing and started telling me about it and got me really into the work of Ray Johnson, who's someone I'm a huge fan of. If you don't know who he is, I would encourage everyone to go look up his work. It's awesome. But so then I was like, oh, this is like something I already kind of do. Like, this is kind of cool. And then it just kind of went from there, I guess.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Luke. Does anyone else have any final question or comment before we keep going? So thank you so much again. And we are then going to travel to Mark Van Wagner's studio in about 2 minutes.
So we have really quickly gotten all the way east to Bellport, New York, where Mark's studio is. Mark received his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the School of Art Institute of Chicago and studied art history, architecture, and urban planning at Colorado College. He has worked in the contemporary art world for over 30 years, exhibiting and curating in the field. He has exhibited his artwork throughout the United States and is in the collection of the Rockford Art Museum in Illinois, as well as many private collections. In 2012, Van Wagner moved from Kauai, Hawaii, where he lived for 7 years, and he moved to Bellport, New York. And three words to describe his work are anthropomorphic, architectonic, you really tested me here, and deconstructive. So please welcome Mark Van Wagner.
Very good. Thanks, Joy. And thanks, Christina, and the whole staff at the Heckscher for doing the Biennale and keeping that going for the artist of Long Island. It's good to have something to look forward to, see other artists that are on the island and interact with them as Luke was pointing out earlier. So I think what I'll start with is maybe just since you mentioned where I went to school, I was thinking about this through the other interviews, and especially since the previous artists are educators and teachers. And I just thought how important it was for me when I was going to the Art Institute of Chicago to have wonderful teachers, and for them always to be sharing and pointing the direction for me as a student to look at certain artworks. And the advantage of being at the Art Institute of Chicago, at least when I was going to school there, was that the museum was, or the school was connected to the Museum of the Art Institute. Now just imagine if there was a school connected to the Met. Okay, the Art Institute is not the Met, but it certainly is a miniature or miniaturized version of the Met, and there's so much to be able to see. And within 5-minute or 10-minute walking, you could get through the school and be in the museum without ever having to leave either building. And with that, you were able to be exposed to so many different periods and artworks that would have an effect on you, because as a student, you're just absorbing. And my teacher, who was Ray Yoshida, was an excellent teacher, and he got me to see so many different types of artworks. And one of the things that is sort of prevalent in the Chicago art scene is that artists or teachers really promoted the act of collecting. They really promoted the fact that you can find gems in thrift stores, and you can buy them and put them on your wall and influence your current work, as well as going in and seeing this wonderful artwork at the Art Institute, where you're seeing Japanese landscapes or Monets or works from the Renaissance. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is that there were a lot of influences for me, and I always went into question of what's high and what's low. And that's where I'll be taking you in terms of my own personal work and journey through what I've sort of arrived at lately. This notion that there is high art and low art, but my influences and the people around me that taught me really tried to get me around that. And there can be just something, there could be a gem of something to be found. And like I mentioned, in the thrift stores, there where it was to go and look at, a 13th century medieval painting. So what I'll do first here, and I'll incorporate this into my work, is maybe we'll just have a look around. And first we'll start with these works that, or this one work that I completed in the early 90s that I think you'll see a lot of different influences with. And if I could just go ahead and do that, does that sound good, Joy and Christina?
Sounds great.
Okay, let's just turn this around. So first of all, just take a whirl around the studio here. I'll go and look at more detailed works, but just do a real quick run around here. And I thought to start off with this painting here, and one of the things I fell in love with, speaking of different type of art in art school, were botanical prints. And I always like that scientific investigation into the way a plant emerged, the scientific illustrations or botanicals often showed the seedlings, then the flower, and then various parts of that tree or bush or shrub or flower. And I wanted to riff on that a little bit after I'd gotten out of school. And when I started showing in this gallery in Chicago, I started working with this idea and sort of combining all these various, I guess, I don't want to say styles, but incorporating them into my work, certainly influence from them. This is just oil paint, just pure and objective, objectifying the oil paint. And then here you have sticks, stones, acorns, trash of various sorts. That says compound on it. This one says construction. It was basically very much in, this ontological approach to doing my work. This piece, I think, if I can remember correctly, since it was from the early 90s, was very much about mitosis. And I was really into the material. This piece combines taking both the oil and the garbage and combining them into a piece here. The also very much into the illusion of without necessarily painting the illusion. I use contact paper here to cement. It was a grainy contact paper that I used as sort of a decorative element. And again, this whole idea that when I was going to school, botanical prints were poo-pooed as fluffy art. And I thought, that's nonsense, because some of them were just so beautiful. I was working in a gallery and I just loved framing them. I was doing a lot of the framework of them and I just found them fascinating. We'd get these books in from all over the world, Italy and France and America as well. You have the Autobahns, and they were just beautiful. So I wanted to sort of take, things that I'd learned in art school in terms of conceptual art. I was influenced very much by Joseph Beuys and Duchamp and the Art Povera movement. And I wanted to sort of combine and mix those elements of all those different types of aesthetics into a piece and see what I came up with. And it was very much about sort of the dissolution of and the crumbling and the mulching of material. I mean, literally, this is like a mulch. And I thought that was an interesting discovery that I made, and eventually is where I'm taking us to, is that in this piece there's some sand here, and I thought that sand really was the best representative and material to use to represent the dissolution of material. So eventually I pretty much settled on just using sand for that very reason, and for all the multiple metaphors it brings, to the viewer. This is a piece, let me see when I did this. This was in 2015. It's an older work. There are some photographs that I did when I was living in Hawaii. I draw in the sand, and then I take the pictures as the water would wash up underneath my feet and then come back. More works on sand. I've been working with sand for 10 years. And I work with natural and pigmented sands from all over the world, as well as these sands that I'm going to take you through here, which are colored sands that you can buy on the internet. And again, here's this element of what we would consider kind of a lowbrow art, scenic sand. I mean, This is stuff that you, it's not oil paint. I'm not spending a lot of money on oil paint or materials. I basically can get these materials and I can mix them and come up with various shades of greens, as you can see in here. I might even take sand from Fire Island and mix it in with some of the more pigmented sands, come up with shades of green, shades of pink. A lot of the sand gets labeled. This is from the beach of Moloa'a on the island of Kauai. I have sands from Moab, Utah. It's a little Moab magic, I call them. This is sand that I got from Hope Cove, Devon. So what's interesting too here for me, at least, is that I very much enjoy landscape painting. And when you are taking, when you're taking, I'm gonna have to go over here and plug in. Looks like I got a low battery. When you are taking elements from a landscape, you're including that element into your piece, and that piece then becomes part of that place. So I started doing that and really enjoying that. So some of my works, I'm going to see if I can disconnect here with my battery just temporarily and go over to this piece here. These are all boxes, by the way, incorporated from my pile over there. I use the boxes because, again, the metaphor of sand boxes, where I believe the creative spirit for me was ignited, as well as the beach. And I love the idea of using boxes to be the foundation or the backbone of the work. It's kind of like what Paul was using for his homes, his houses that he's making, and then coating these boxes with layer upon layer upon layer of sand. And this particular sand on this piece is from the island of Kauai. These are two different beaches, the beach of Waimea and the beach of Anini and Moloa'a. There's also, I don't know if you can see this, but there's some glass in there. There was a beach that was actually called Glass Beach that, let me see if I can go over and get the, if I can find it over here. It was, let me just see, yeah. It's just amazing to me that a beach was just covered, like I'm saying, like maybe 100 yards. And this is just all glass that I got from Glass Beach. It's just, and you wonder how that happened. And it was from a junk heap that was down the beach where they throw all their junk over the cliff. I also incorporate in the work, I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I incorporate a lot of debris that washed up onto the shores. I'm sure you can find this here as well as we did in Kauai. Unfortunately, the cruise ships just had to tear up get a certain size they could tear up, and then that would be allowed to be disposed of into the ocean. So a lot of this stuff would come washing up onto the shores of where I was living, and I often incorporate that, and that gets kind of stuck into the work. This was a piece I did back in 2015, and it was a painting that I wanted to, I guess what I want to say here is that it was just screaming at this certain point 5 years ago. I needed to get off the canvas and start, having these pieces become three-dimensional, even though that the sand on here is very thick. this is a crushed up box that I made it onto the wall. So some of these works, and you're welcome to ask any questions as I'm going around.
Yeah, Mark, can
Yeah.
with the pieces where you have multiple boxes, could you speak a little bit to the relationships that start to form between them?
Yeah, sure. I think what's interesting here with where play really comes into into serious play is that if you're I usually start with just coloring boxes, and a lot of times relationships start to happen. I mean, this studio is very clean right now. It may not look it, but it's very clean. What's happening in here a lot of times is this place is just covered with boxes, and things start to happen, relationships start to happen. For instance, this piece over here, that's a diptych, the white and the black boxes. This piece, there were just two boxes standing in the corner, and I could see that there was something going on between them. It really felt like they were talking to each other, and there was a dialogue happening between them. And so I wanted to push that dialogue, and I just, really sat with these things, as I'm sure the other artists can tell you. A lot of what happens in a studio is not necessarily physical work that occurs, but it's more the looking and listening to what is appearing, and you kind of react to that. So in this particular piece, you'll notice there's a very slight concavity to the piece on the right. I don't know if you can see that, the black, and then there's a convex sort of indentation on the white one. So to me, it's kind of this yin yang, breathing in, breathing out piece for me. And it's also can be interpreted as many other things. And when you get up close, you'll see the texture. There's mica. I don't know if it's if you're able to see the sparkles that start to happen when you move across them. And I put this piece out in the yard for a day or two. And it was, I mean, they can't be out there for very long because if it were to rain, the sand, I'm sure it would just, they're not protected like concrete, but maybe someday I'll be able to do some of these in bronze or maybe I could do them in concrete. I don't know. Anyway, so that may answer a little bit of sort of the relationship that happened. Same thing with this piece here. It just sort of happened. You have these two boxes, and I just start playing with them, seeing if they might have been juxtaposed like that. Something happened. I see that there's an indentation on this one. I bend it back a little bit. I put this one up against this one, and all of a sudden you have, are they leaning on each other? Is that one kicking the other one? This one I really thought of this load. I really wanted to have a piece that conveyed the idea of weight and the idea of carrying a load. It can say about so many things. When I traveled to India, I just remember on these bikes, some of the amount of things that were put on the motorcycles or the bicycles, even the little rickshaws. It just amazed me, the load. And then I started thinking metaphorically, the loads we carry. And then certainly when I was in Hawaii, which the sand is from here, I started feeling this, I don't know, maybe it was this kind of this overbearing load or feeling as an intruder on Hawaii that I was feeling as a white man, being in that society. You can just you can just go on and on and on thinking about loads and what can be interpreted in terms of that. And so it can also, things falling. I mean, we can talk about our current events and, the multiple of layers. And as Luke was speaking earlier, you really want the viewer to bring what they want to the piece. And sometimes a title can help along the way to help, the viewer along, or sometimes a title can be too obvious. So it's a real tricky thing to title work, I believe. And you want to have it ambiguous, but you also want to have it say a little bit about what maybe you interpret the work as.
Mark, can you talk a little bit about your process, like in terms of how you apply the sand?
Sure. Yeah. I have lots of different things. For instance, there's this great thing called wood glue. Thank God for it. I often start with the boxes, and depending on, I'll just start by maybe even crunching them, maybe not crunching them. You'll see down here, there are some boxes that aren't crunched, that are crunched. What you do is you can get a box. I mean, to get weight, for instance, like this one over here, you can crunch the box, but it won't stay. Like you can just see here. So for instance, this box last night or the day before, I really, I wanted to crunch it up a little bit so that it seemed like it had some weight. And I used, after you use the wood glue 1 or 2 times, the box stiffens up. You apply the wood glue, then you apply the sand, and then it's still, not tough. You can see, I don't know if you can see, you can have a little bit of movement with some of these, but you can start applying pressure with clamps and then recoating wood glue on. And once the wood glue sets up, it gets pretty darn tough. And so you can start playing around with this idea of weight and the pressure that something that's placed on top of that object can create that illusion. So I will apply, you'll see lots of different types of glues as well, because the sand reacts differently to different glues. Polymers, I use a lot of primer gesso type paints, whites mostly, because I really like to use the colors of the sand into the work. And then it's just a matter of getting the pieces sort of together like you would, a Lego set or whatever. Or what did I have back then? They were Lincoln logs. Yeah, Lincoln logs. And then you just start arranging them and things start to happen like you would on a canvas or a collage, or, things start to happen. Like, for instance, it's interesting. These are 2 different pieces, but this morning I was just setting up, and all of a sudden this becomes a piece here. I'm thinking now, maybe that's a piece in itself. This little piece and this big piece. They were 2 separate pieces, but they've kind of evolved into this, I don't know, this dynamic that's happening between this piece that's like looking up at this other piece. And I definitely think of, like, David and Goliath when I'm looking at this piece. And when I was, I think last couple of days ago, we were talking in Joy, I was saying, what is this? This might even be like a mother and child, a Madonna and child. Certain things start to happen in a studio, at least in this studio. If I'm open and letting things happen, and they take time. This is a piece that I'm just sort of putting together with boxes. It is one of the larger ones I've put together, and we'll see if we'll see if it happens, in terms of, completion. I don't know if that'll be complete or not.
We're gonna
Maybe just
have to
getting-
send it. You're gonna have to send it to us if it gets completed. A picture.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, because you just never know, I can just start throwing boxes out here and things just start happening. You don't, and I'll crush them. I'll break them up, and sometimes they make it into a pile. Right now, I've cleared a lot of stuff out. I have a lot of storage. Where these guys end up making it to, some of them stick around, but I don't know.
Mark, it's also interesting what you were saying about those two that you're thinking of putting together, like the large one and the smaller one, because when I was looking at it before, you said the relationship of the small one looking up, I saw it as the small one looking down and away with sort of her back.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, I can see that.
Fascinating, just the difference in interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. And I want that to be there. I think any artist really wants that to be there. There's sometimes people come up and say, "Oh my God, that piece just reminds me of, blood and, death and destruction." And someone will say, "Oh my God, that reminds me of a peony." It's, I'm sure the other artists will say the same thing. I'm sure, like with Paul's work, there's so much that can be interpreted in his houses and what's going on inside. I don't know what else to talk about. I feel like it's
your battery is.
Yeah, hold on, let me get it on.
Well, maybe we should open it up. Does anyone have any questions for Mark? Because I know it is getting also a little bit late.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do you think, Mark, that people who have collected your boxes, have you always had them be collected in pairs, or have some people just collected one box? And do you think that the ones that are in pairs are like I don't know, like I feel to me like there's like always a dialogue between the boxes, and I like the ones that are paired. Like, not that I don't like the singular ones, but I feel like there's just this like an amazing connection between the pairs.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'm going to have to say both. There have been people that have collected them singularly, and they like to have them in their home, and it's just like this funny sort of being that is with them. And then there are others that I've actually created one where it was just completely stackable, like that big one there. It's almost the size of that. But I didn't glue any of them together. So the person that purchased that bought that piece, I said, you're more than welcome to switch it up, and change it around and restack it in the area that you wish to have it, or how you'd like to restack it. I don't always do it like that. Sometimes they're like, for instance, that diptych over there. Sometimes they just make sense that they're together, but I wouldn't, once someone takes a piece home, they can do what they wish. I know a lot of abstract artists, friends of mine who do work, not abstract friends, people, friends of mine who are artists who do abstract work. sometimes their works can be turned, and maybe the way they painted it is not the way the person, the person who takes it home with them decides to hang it. And now that can be upsetting, but it is a reality of of abstraction and how people live and claim ownership. It's interesting. It's a real question.
Mhm. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Tell me the sand, the collection of sands that you have from around the world, are they naturally pigmented or what?
Yeah, those are all natural. So for instance, you know what I'm going to try to do? I'm going to hold on just a second. I'm going to get onto an extension cord. I think that'll do the trick. Yeah. So here we go. So for instance, as I was pointing out earlier, this is from Hawaii. It also is a big grain. It's got a lot of grain, the larger grain to it. The Moab sand is a very fluffy sand, and that's natural. That's a lot of ore. A lot of ore is in that sand that came off the mountain of one of these cliffs that I was nearby. Of course, sand. The beauty of sand is that it's all these particulates that have broken down, the matter from the area and the region that it was in. So you can get black sand from Hawaii because of the lava. This sand from Devon is another shade, and it's got a lot of different colors in it that make up the color, which I find very interesting too, because when you talk about, say, the Impressionists or people now doing things with pixels, and here's the glass, look at all the different colors that are in this. These to me are like little pixels. They are close up, they're very abstract, but you can do shading with them and they make up. These sections they can start defining bigger areas. Let me show you some other colors. Oh, this is from Fire Island. Here, this is interesting. This black sand actually comes onto Fire Island during the winter months, and I don't know what that's from. Maybe someone out there could tell us. I don't know why it's that shade, but that's from Fire Island. And then you've got other sand from Fire. This is from Georgia. This is from the Georgia coast. This is a little more gray, and it's got more chips of the shells. So it's wonderful to take the synthetic or the pigmented sand and mix them together.
Well, let me just say that I love your work. It's imaginative and mysterious, and I really appreciate your commitment to just one material for such a long time.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have one more question. Why would anyone leave Hawaii to move to beautiful Bellport?
that question. That question often comes my way.
Yeah.
It actually was because of family. I was in Hawaii for 7 years. My father was getting old. My family, I grew up out here on the East Coast. He was not doing well, and I wanted to be back here for the final years of his life, which I was able to do. My wife is also Swiss, so literally Switzerland and Hawaii were directly opposite each other on the globe, and it was just difficult with her family and my family back closer to the coast, and it was beautiful there. But I was missing culture. I was really missing the culture of, maybe I was getting so much back into my artwork that I really wanted to get closer to New York City, where, I could once again go to museums and see this incredible amount of artwork that was being created. The beauty of Kauai is that it for 7 years, I really enjoyed it. It was really releasing what I'd had before in terms of other things. And it was time to go, I guess, for many reasons. And I'm happy to be here on Long Island. One of the reasons I settled on the South Shore of, Chicago, of Long Island was because I'd have access to sand. Since I'd started this journey of material and use of material in Hawaii. So that's why I'm here. Now I have to be near a coast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank all of you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any final questions?
I was just gonna, can I add something for Mark? I was gonna tell him that, so I don't know if this is 100% true. I've never fact checked it, but I was told that the darker colored sand on Long Island, when we get that purple in it almost sometimes, is potassium in the sand that makes it that color. And then during the winter, I know you see it more because it's a bit heavier. So like we usually have all that wind, heavy. So the lighter sand is getting blown off, and that's what's kind of left behind.
Yeah. So. Well, I find it fascinating to go during the winter months and walk. Smith Point is where I'm located near Bellport's near, and I just love walking it at all different times of year. You get all different types of versions of that beach, moving in and out, and so that's great. Potassium. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Anything I can do to help.
I think that one of the most interesting things about these studio tours has been how, each of them have had 3 artists so far, and you all don't know one another. And there have been so many, not similarities, but themes that come and go throughout the 3 of your art, works of art and studio practice. And I just think it's really interesting. And I'm sure that each of you really, aside from all of us who are listening, but I'm sure each of you have been inspired by what you have each heard from the other artists today. So I think that's really neat, and not necessarily a byproduct that we realized until we began, all of us, delving in and getting to know one another.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Joy, with that. And that's why I think this biennial is really a gem for some of us, especially for someone like myself, who's, I've only been here 6 years, 7 years, but I don't know, it's introduced me to all these different artists. I met this guy Adam at the museum last when I was sitting at the gallery space in the museum. What was that, Friday? What a joy to talk to Adam Schius about his work. It's a great thing, and I'm sure we're all thanking you over and over for that, and as a vehicle for us all to meet each other.
It's wonderful, and it's also wonderful that we've managed to do this even via Zoom, so that it might have been that we could have planned a lot of things in person, but the fact is, obviously, that we are all in separate spaces, but yet we've still been able to share in this pretty unique way. And I think it's terrific, and I thank you all 3 of you, for your time and planning and filming and figuring out Wi-Fi and just doing everything so that our audience today could enjoy, and it was terrific. So a couple just final things that I wanted everyone to know. Thursday, November 19th, there'll be a biennial panel discussion with Deborah Buck and Paul Farinacci from Today, Holly Hunt and Danielle Lavoti, who will be chatting with our curator. Friday, December 11th, Paul Farinacci will be our artist in the gallery. So please come down so that you can actually meet him in person. And our last studio tour will be Sunday, December 13th, if you haven't signed up yet. It will be artists Deborah Buck, Barbara Stein, and Claire Watson. And I so appreciate everybody joining us today. And thank you.